Hey, good afternoon. I now call to order the Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session Tuesday, November 15th, 2022 at 4 p.m. Board Meeting Room, 39 Bank Street, Chatham, Virginia. Ms. McCluster, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Cheshire.
Here.
Mr. Dalton.
Here.
Mr. Dudley.
Present.
Mr. Scarce.
Here.
Mr. Tucker.
Here.
Mr. Warren.
Here.
Mr. Ingram.
Present. I'm going to throw a 2B in here, and I'd like to welcome my newest colleague, Mr. Tucker, to the board. It's an honor to have you, and it'll be a pleasure working with you. So I'll say this again, but I want to say it now for you. I know I was supposed to get 2B approved, but anyway, I just added that. Item number 3, any items to be added to the agenda?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add, I guess it's going to be item 6, F, a discussion of the land use deadlines and programs that are rapidly approaching.
Okay, sir. Have a motion to add item 6F, discussion on land use. What about a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Okay, cast your vote, gentlemen. Okay, that has passed. Item 4, approval of the agenda. For the citizens' convenience, all work session and committee meetings are now being recorded and can be viewed on the same YouTube location as the Board of Supervisors business meetings. Please remember that the board's work session is designated for internal board and county staff communication, discussion, and work. It is not a question and answer session with the audience. Accordingly, during the work session, no questions or comments from the audience will be entertained. Respectfully, any outburst or disorderly conduct from the audience will not be tolerated and may result in the offending person's removal from the work session. As a reminder, all county citizens and other appropriate parties as designated by the board's bylaws are permitted to make comments under the hearing of the citizens section of tonight's business meetings. So having said that, do we have anybody signed up?
Approve the agenda.
I'm making a motion we approve the agenda with the addition of 6F.
Okay, all right, what about a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? If not, cast your vote. Okay, that is passed. We're down to presentations, right? Ms. Lindsay Hodges, I think you and Jay Craddock are up. Y'all come on up. Good to have you. Good afternoon, Jay. Hey, Jay, hold on a second. Flip your on, switch on your mic there, please.
All right, is that better?
That's much
Yes,
better.
sir.
Thank you.
Well, our main purpose for coming here this afternoon was to introduce you all to Lindsay Hodges. She's our new resident engineer. And then I got to thinking I probably ought to introduce myself to Mr. Tucker. My name's Jay Craddock. I'm the assistant resident engineer, so Lindsay's assistant. I work out of the Chatham office for VDOT up on 29, right by the State Police building. Look forward to working with you.
My pleasure.
But Lindsay, she's a Virginia Tech graduate, and she is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Virginia. She's been with VDOT for about 9 years, and her previous jobs at VDOT she's been involved with land use. She's worked for traffic engineering, and her most recent job before coming to us is she was a area construction engineer. So she's got a good background, and we're happy to have her. You want to say anything?
Thank you, Jay.
I appreciate being here today, and I look forward to working with all of you. I can get you my contact information if you'd like it, and if you ever need anything, please reach out to me.
That's great. Good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay, let me give you my card, and if you give me your information, I'll push it out to the board in our Friday update, so they can bug you when it snows and does all those things.
All we ask of you is don't let nothing happen to Jay. We can't do without him.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Figured while we were here, I'd just give you a quick update on our rural rustic program, the unpaved roads that we got paved this past year. So this past year, we finished up, actually just last week, we just finished up, but we We finished up Cox's Store Road, Cherrystone Lake Road, Friendly Drive, Hubbard Road, Oliver's Lane, and Rourke Mill Road. And then what we have on the schedule for next construction season is we're going to pave Oxford Road, Pocket Road, Victoria Road, and Valley Road. And I'll be coming to you in the spring to do our annual 6-year plan to determine what roads we want to add 6 years out. So if you got any unpaved roads in your area, be thinking about what you'd like to see added to the plan.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions or anything? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a quick question since we went off topic a little bit. Have they rescheduled the traffic study for 58 for the RV palaces in the Westover district?
That entrance is actually going to tie into 58 within the city limits of Danville, and they maintain their own road. So we've had limited involvement up to this point. If that development trips a certain threshold, then the Code of Virginia requires that once it reaches so many vehicle trips per day, and the exact number escapes me, but it's a lot. But once it hits that threshold, they're required by the Code of Virginia to submit a traffic impact analysis if it's within 3,000 foot of a VDOT maintained road, and it is within that 3,000 foot. So it's up to the developer to provide that information as far as how many trips their development's going to generate, and because they're talking about all kinds of varied uses, and we haven't seen that number yet to know whether the traffic impact analysis would be required. But so that's about all I can tell you at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Jay, I think most of us were on the assumption that VDOT would be heavily involved in that, particularly from a traffic safety perspective. But since it is in the city, it's going to fall back primarily on the developer. And as far as the cost, who would incur the cost? Would it be the city or the developer, or
It
on the
could
third party?
be either. Typically, it's the developer, but I guess from VDOT's perspective, we don't really care who pays for it. But if it gets to that point where they're required to do one, then VDOT will be heavily involved. VDOT will be reviewing the study. Like I said, if it trips that threshold to where they're required to do one.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Warren.
Yeah, Jay, really just a moment of refreshing my memory. I don't remember as well as I once did. If we have a road that is currently a private road, let's say it's got 10 to 20 houses on it, and they want to transition to a state-maintained road, can you review quickly what they have to do, what those 20 homes would have to do?
I'll give you the quick summary. The way it would be taken into the system is as a rural addition is the terminology, and it's a whole section in the Code of Virginia about that. But basically, it has to meet certain requirements. It has to have been open to public use for at least 20 years. If the road has less than 50 parcels on it, then every person that lives on the road or owns property on the road has to agree for it to become a state-maintained road.
So it's got to be 100%.
100%.
Yep.
If it's less than 50 parcels. Once it gets above 50, that requirement is no longer in place. There has to be at least 40 foot of right-of-way dedicated for the road. And then the road has to be physically brought up to VDOT standards, and then we would take it into the system and we would maintain it from that point on.
Can you send that detailed information to Mr. Hunt and let him disseminate it to the board?
Yes, sir. I'll send it to him.
Yeah, and Mr. Warren, the rub is usually that last one he talked about, because it's exceedingly expensive, and when you go to pass the hat, there's invariably someone who will not pay their share. So, but that's not to say it's not impossible to.
No, it's rare. I'll say that. I've been here for almost 12 years, and we've done 2 since I've been here, 1 in Halifax and 1 in Pennsylvania County. And in both cases, the citizens that lived on the road put up the money.
I
for the
was
improvement.
questioned about this. It's actually in Ringgold District, and I get with Mr. Cheshire sometime this evening, because they just asked me about it about 12:30 today, running someone outside. I know I've had the experience in my district. You remember the big culvert got washed out, and they decided they wanted to turn it over, and it was too late then. It was too late then, so.
But I'll send him the information. It gets very complicated, and one of the reasons why it's so hard to follow is the regulations for rural additions were written at a time when the funding stream was different than it is now. And so there's going to be some language in the code that's really hard to follow, but just to summarize, it says in the code that the county can take up to 5% of its annual construction money and use it to help fund these projects. Well, years ago, that was a significant amount of money, but then when we moved to the Smart Scale program, that money went away, so 5% of zero is zero. So the program is still in place, just the funding is no longer there like it was years ago.
I remember we used this, and that's what I was asking my colleague.
Talking about the telefunds?
Telefunds. Do we still have access to any telefunds for any kind of project, not just this, but?
Telefees, yes, we've been using those for doing, they don't count as secondary construction funds. That's a different category of money, I guess. But we use those for the last several years. What we've been spending them on is trench widening.
Ms. Trent, can you get us a counting of that fund?
And that money re-ups every
Yes, sir.
year, so that is a
Yeah,
reoccurring.
funds continue to go in there, and they get used.
I will get with Jay and get your report, and we'll get it in the Friday update for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Uh,
I got one question, if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
mind. I think it was you on 726, 729 Kentucky Road. Is there an update on when they're going to be able to do anything with the signs?
I do not have an update. I asked for one today, and I just haven't gotten a response yet, but I can tell you that they are going to do the flashing stop signs in both directions. I just don't have an install date yet.
Okay.
I've been told the signs have been ordered, but we're having some supply chain issues, I know, so I don't have an exact date yet, but I can tell you it's coming. So.
One thing that was brought up, which was a good idea, rumble strips, is that a consideration with VDOT?
There's actually rumble strips already installed in I guess it'd be the westbound direction.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Studley.
Jay, thanks for everything you do. You do a great job. I appreciate you just being able to contact you. You were speaking about the Pocket Road paving. Is that going to be on the surface of the Pocket Road or the very end over there where it's just gravel right now?
The part that's gravel.
Okay.
But the
okay.
part that's gravel now will be paved this
Okay.
time next year.
Okay. That's what I need, because I know rough road anyway. It's just,
Right.
I was just wondering which section. Thank you, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? All
Mr.
right.
Chairman,
Thank-
one quick question. Sir, Jay, thank you so much for your presentation. Good to meet you, ma'am. I don't know if anyone's brought it to your attention. The intersection of US Route 40 and 640 in the Mount Airy community is a very dangerous intersection. So I would ask if you would respectfully consider caution lights in both directions there.
Yes, sir. It has been brought to my attention with the last accident, and it's currently being reviewed.
Thank you.
So I'll let you know. I'll add your name to the work order so that when it's complete, I'll know to notify you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jay.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Lindsay.
You
Thank
didn't know
y'all.
you were going to be on the hot seat today, Jay, did you?
Caitlin, any more presentations? All right. Now we're down to 6. I believe up next is Sheriff Mike Taylor.
And Mr. Chairman, Sheriff Taylor's going to present, and then we're going to need to lean heavily on Ms. Vanderhyde. She has a presentation about how we might be able to financially swing what we're discussing. She's got some slides for us.
All right. Y'all gonna come up at the same time?
That's right, tag team.
Welcome. Good to see you, Mike. Sure. I'm sorry.
I'll just start by giving a little quick preview of what I know about this grant. I know that it came up pretty quickly. I think it's the governor's intention to put school resource officers in all of the schools in the state of Virginia. And these were some funds that came available, and so the grant period opened very quickly, and it was a very quick turnaround. So the grant writer in the sheriff's office went ahead and applied for that grant back in September, knowing that you all would have to accept the grant if it was awarded. We did receive a letter in October saying that we were awarded this grant. It is for 10 SRO positions. And so we're here today to tell you a little bit about what that means, how much that means, and that kind of stuff. And definitely Mike needs to chime in. He knows a whole lot more about it than I do, and he's made a lot more contacts than I have. This is a grant that the school board is well aware of, and I contacted Ms. Worley about it, about possible funding that they may have that could help with this. The first phase, which is year one, we're already in it actually. It started October 1, and it's for 9 months. It's through the end of the fiscal year, June 30. And that grant covers the salaries of 10 SRO positions and the fringes for that. It's $475,170. So there is no local match in those first 9 months. But if we were to go all in and we hired 10 new deputies, I did reach out to the sheriff's office to say, okay, what is that really going to cost? Because those deputies need to be outfitted. They need a gun, they need a belt, they need accessories. So it's about $50,000 to outfit one deputy. So you're looking at a upfront cost of $500,000, $505,960. If we were to just outright hire 10 new deputies and what that would mean. That does include a car for each of those deputies. Phase 2 would be years 2 through 4. And so after 9 months, the local match just on the salaries is 25%. So based on what they're being paid currently, or $47,000, that would be roughly $158,000. But bear in mind, that would change with salary increases and that kind of thing, because we would be responsible for any salary increases. So I wanted to give you, this is worst case scenario, but we have certainly been working to figure out how could we come up with funding for this should this become reality. And so I met with Sheriff Taylor today. He's got some great ideas about how maybe we can do that. We just need to make sure that we're okay as far as DCJS with how we want to handle that. And I'll let him go over that, you think? Okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, sir.
Let me begin by just saying this. We talk about SROs, and of course, the first thing we think about is the safety in the school, the safety of the staff, the students. But it goes a little deeper than that. To be an SRO, you have to, number one, be a Virginia certified officer. And then you have to go to a separate training that the officers go through each summer because the schools are out for the summer. DCJS, Department of Criminal Justice Services, recognizes that. They have to have a second certification. And part of that certification is recognizing mental illness. So the SROs are in that environment every day. They're making personal contacts with the students. They travel to their homes, they talk to the parents. Sometimes when the schools are so busy, they will even, if there's an issue, they will even transport the student home if there's a discipline issue or something that rises to that level. So it's more than an SRO standing at the door, standing guard. They are there every day. They are trained in recognizing the gang activity. which we know we have in our county, from the north end to the south end. So it's more than just the SRO just being there. There are 27 schools in this county, 14 elementary schools, 6 middle and 4 high schools, the vocational school, the career tech school, the alternative school, the Victory School. So in thinking about, and listen, we all recognize the ask on this. It's a tremendous ask. I was in a meeting in Virginia Beach about a month ago. Governor Youngkin was there, and he said, my goal is to put an SRO in every school in Virginia. He recognizes that. He recognizes the importance. I was talking to Kim about this. I'm not sure the origin where the state found these funds, but normally you don't see this in a grant. I haven't seen it in a grant application when they refer to the funds as special funds. I don't know if they're federal funds, it's trickled down through the burn grants. I just don't know the origin of that money. So one of the things that we thought we could do, we have 8 school resource officers now. All are certified, all have these SRO certifications. So we thought, what if we could take those 8, and in that packet, you will see that we broke down what their salaries are now. And of course, the annual salaries right now for the SROs is a little over $500,000. So we thought, what if we could take those SROs and move them to the grant positions, and at least for the first 9 months, it would free up that money from the comp board and the county positions. Of those 8, there are 4 compensation board paid deputies that have some supplements from the county, and then there are 4 fully paid county positions. So we were thinking if we can move those 8 to those positions, that would still leave 2 vacancies that we try to hire for. It would free up that monies, that $500,000+, and for that first year, the salaries would be paid for the first 9 months. Then the second period of that grant, the county would only have to pay 25% of the $47,000, which is about $11,000 and some change per officer, that the county would have to appropriate the money. So then the question came, if we did that and the compensation board positions, how would that have an unintended consequence down the road for them if we took them out of a comp board position and put them into a grant position? The representative from the comp board said that just to be careful, because if they are separated for 30 days out of that comp board position, they would lose their seniority at VRS. In the past, that has not been an issue with the county. They picked that up if there was a compression issue, that the state funded compression salaries increases for the deputies. So we think that's a fix. There's another little caveat, and I was just on the phone with my friend in the Attorney General's office, and I think this is an unintended consequence from the governor. In the grant funding application, it talks about supplanting. So when we reached out to DCJS this afternoon to try to get an answer for that, can we take the existing SROs and put them into the grant positions? Do you consider that supplanting? And the answer was yes. So we've got a little stumbling block here. But I don't think the governor intended for that to happen. I think that's just one of those little glitches. So hopefully by the end of the day, we'll have an answer from at least the Attorney General's office or somebody from the Governor's office that will get in touch with the Department of Criminal Justice Services that oversees these grants, and they'll say, okay, we're going to amend that, because we're not the only ones that are dealing with that. I mean, agencies, localities across the state that are financially challenged, they want to provide the security for the schools, but that one little block in there might prevent them from doing it. I know we're unique in having that many schools in our county, but I think this is something that is needed in our schools. We're seeing an uptick in mental health issues. All of our SROs go through the crisis intervention training that's put on by DCJS. That's a 40-hour class. Each one of those are certified in the CIT training. So they recognize when a child is in crisis, especially in the middle schools, when you don't know whether you're standing on your head or standing on your feet. And everything is an issue with those children. They can recognize and talk to them and hopefully counsel with them and see them through their crisis. As you all know, some of the children that come to school, the safest part of their day is when they're in school because of their home life. So these SROs, they reach out and they touch these children every day. And I can tell you from experience, if an SRO that's assigned to a school is out for any period of time, he may have court, he may be out sick, he may be on vacation, I'm going to get a call within about an hour of the school opening. Where's our SRO? So it's been a blessing that the board, the prior boards have funded those positions for the county. So I will hopefully answer any questions you might have. We hope that this is a resolution. It would be a positive resolution for us if they come back with an answer that this is not supplanting. That's what we're hoping for, because it will make it easier. Another issue is, too, if we move the SROs to the grant funds, it will free up money on the comp board side, because that position now is opened up. We don't lose that position with the comp board. That money is already appropriated to that position. So if that position is not filled by the end of the year, like we do every year, we take those cost savings and we give them back to the county. And sometimes that's in the area of $250,000 to $300,000, somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. If you'll notice, and we talked about, and Kim talked about it too, about the equipment. The existing SROs already have their equipment. They have the cars, they have their training, they have their weapons that they need. So that wouldn't be an issue, but I did include it in the third phase or the third year of that grant, just for the cars. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those. We're excited about the opportunity, hopefully optimistic that we'll get a positive response from the governor's office.
Thank you, Sheriff. Gentlemen, any questions?
I'm good.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I have one. How quick do we have to act to secure the grant while we're waiting on the AG?
The grant started October 1 of 22. It was we were drinking from a fire hose there for a minute, because normally you get ample notice about these funds. And we got notice, hey, you hadn't applied for this grant. That came from Richmond. You know, you said you need SROs, but you're not applying with a Hood grant. So we had about a week to get all the information together to apply. We had a very short window, but we met it, and that was probably the quickest response on an award that I've seen. I mean, it was just a matter of a couple of days. So to answer your question, Mr. Warren, it's in effect now. Now, there is I cannot find any drop-dead date. I don't see anything that says you have got to make a response by so-and-so, but if we don't use the money, it's going to go to another locality. That's right. I can assure you that.
Nick, have a follow-up question to that. You're going to have to, it looks like you got 8, you want to have 10.
We asked for 10.
Okay, so you got to fill 2 vacancies.
Yes, sir.
Are those vacancies going to be filled with internal people? And if they are, does that give you concern? Because I know hiring's been an issue, period. And I certainly, seems reasonable, the whole thing seems reasonable, but I always have concerns, and I've shared them with you, and you and I have talked about it quite a bit, about being sure we can get enough people to be able to serve our community, because we're talking about so many square miles and, so many variables that come into play. Does that give you any more concern than you already have about trying to keep good people and find good people?
You've been listening to my phone calls.
No, sir.
It does concern me. How do I say this? Not everybody is cut out to be a school resource officer. They're just not. And if we were to open it up in the office, we may have one person that would show interest. We would have to send that officer to the SRO certification school before he could serve in that capacity. That's just the rules of the SRO. So to answer you that, yes, if somebody did say, I would like to be an SRO, which would give us 9, then that leaves a position in the field. And we have several positions now. I think we have 9 positions in our in the field right now that we're trying to fill.
One last follow-up.
Go ahead.
When we originally started with SROs, we had a grant,
Yes.
and then the grant went away, and basically the county was left with certainly the vast majority of that expense to cover it. So I guess what I'm saying is, or asking for clarity on, is should that occur with this same grant, do you see that the comp board would allow us to go back and have access to those 4 slots that are funded and use them for resource officers? I know we'll have 5, so I'm getting to the bottom line of this, Sheriff Taylor, is the only additional expense that the county would incur in the event that happened somewhere in the future, that if the grants went away, would be we would have 2 more officers that would be the responsibility of the county than we currently have.
That's a true statement.
And I guess you could, at that point in time, as sheriff, it would be within your purview to say, we're going to use 8, and I'm going to put 2 of them back in the field.
You could do that, yes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be clear on it.
Once the grant is done, and if there's no other extensions of that grant, then the board would have to decide, what do I want to do with these positions? There may be open positions that exist that are already, the money has already been appropriated for, it's just there, and we could move those people into those positions.
Thank you. Mr. Dudley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, you mentioned that, Governor Youngkin actually wants a resource officer at every, is it middle school, elementary school, you tell me? Every school?
Every school.
And will this 10 that you're talking about, will that fulfill the need of what you have? That's
No,
just
sir.
part of it, correct?
Not for every school.
Okay, okay.
No, sir. And many of you know, Mr. Tucker may not know, but right now, we may have one SRO, and I'll just give an example, at Dan River High School, which also serves Dan River Middle, because they're in such close proximity. They do that. They will go back and forth. So we try to get as big an area covered as we can. But that would not cover all the
Okay.
schools here in the county. No, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mike.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate the job you're doing.
Mr. Ward? Yes, sir.
But it's my understanding from the presentations that were made by the school division, since the 1% sales tax is now passed, it's their intent to use some of that funding to upgrade their security systems, in particular in schools that are vastly deficient in that component. Is that not true?
Yes, sir, that's true, and Ms. Vanderheide and I have talked about this. I think when they talk about the funds in the tax referendum, that's bricks and mortar. However, if there is money to do the brick and mortar, that frees up other funds that could be used for security for personnel.
Well, if I'm not incorrect, and I could be, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, it is for capital improvements, so some of those security, and you probably speak better to it than I do, Mr. Cheshire, can be used to upgrade your security, provided it's a capital expenditure.
Like, controlled access points?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Would be brick and mortar. Would be an actual structural change. You know, the obvious, you know, metal tech, whatever, but stuff like that, access control, that, I would see that as a structural improvement.
Capital, yeah.
Tied into security.
I would agree with that. And that those funds would help free up other funds. And I might add too, and I wasn't aware of this, and Ms. Vanderheide brought it to my attention today, 2 of the positions now that we have in the county as school resource officers are funded by the school. And they reimburse the county for those salaries, or partially for those salaries. So we have at least 2 positions that I wasn't aware. I thought one of the grants had expired some time back. But we do, 2 of those 8 that I mentioned are funded by the schools now. So that would reduce the burden just a bit.
Yeah.
To make it easy for you all to say yes.
I do have one more question. This may be way out of left field.
Mr. Cheshire,
Ma'am?
I apologize. Can I get you to come up to the microphone?
Oh!
I've just gotten some messages that people are watching the live stream they can't hear. I'm
right.
sorry.
Along with the SROs, and this is with teachers, do we use them, do we include them to some degree in training?
Training as in,
A stopgap between right now, like not having an SRO. If you've got a facility that doesn't have one, what do we do? Is that a resource that we could look at?
I think it's a resource, and just in talking with some of the teachers, it's sort of a two-edged sword. You have some teachers say, yes, I'll be happy to step in. Some teachers say, that's not my role. You know, we've had that discussion in the office. Now, I can tell you, as far as training, and it might be off topic a bit, but in January, and you all will be invited to this, in January, we've hired a consulting firm through our office in California that is coming here to the ODAC Center, and they're going to put on a 2-day training for reunification. Should we have an event at a school, I think hopefully by now, we've got the response now. We know what we have to do as law enforcement. We know that. There's been some awfully hard lessons learned.
Yeah.
Parkland School, Sandy Hook School. What we are deficient in is the reunification piece and having a training with the schools and with the vested partners, local leaders, on how that would come about, where the locations would be, how we reunite the parents with their children, if there are victims, where we send those parents. So it's going to be a two-day training. We're going to pay for that through asset forfeiture. It's pricey, but I think it's important that we get ahead of that piece. And again, that comes in, the SROs will be there because they're going to be a big part in that reunification piece. So you'll be getting an invitation, and hopefully you can be there for that training. But there's been a lot of discussion, Mr. Cheshire, about having armed people in the schools. When we arrive, we don't know who they are. We don't know. There have been instances, and we just went through a training with law enforcement that show up on the scene that may be from another jurisdiction in plain clothes that they deem to be the shooter. So we have to be very, very careful on how we enter schools, how we're dressed, where we wear the badge. There are a lot of moving pieces in this thing should we have an active shooter. And let's pray we never do. Let's just pray we never do.
Amen.
But there have been 68 school shootings in just the last few years. And of course, we just saw what happened in UVA. It's tragic, very tragic. But I think planning for those events, I don't know if we can prevent them. We don't know what's going on in people's minds from day to day. But I think if we plan and have a plan of action, then at least it will be some kind of organization that we can bring to the scene. Having a school resource officer there could prevent it. It could prevent such a thing. So,
Anyone else?
I got a question, Mr.
Yes, sir,
Chairman.
please.
If all this did come to play, and you said you had the green light to start hiring people, with an issue on hiring people, do you think you can get them hired within this first 9 months and get them here before June 23rd, or will this fall into the next year? I guess how would that affect the grant?
yes, I think it's an excellent question. We got two questions on the table with DCGS now. Number one, will they allow us to use the existing SROs? If that happens, that can happen in the next pay period. We can move them right over. If they say you can't do that, you've got to hire new people, I can't give you a timeline, Mr. Dalton. I mean, it's people are a little hesitant about getting into this business right now. But, you know, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic.
Hopefully the grant would go on if it was on into
We can
next
ask
year.
for an extension.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we're not the only ones that's going through this, as the state's going to see. We're just not the only ones going through it.
Exactly.
Sheriff, would you tell me again, how many schools we have SROs in currently, and how many more do we need?
We have 8. We have
Okay.
8 SROs.
8,
We have 27 schools.
okay. And the ultimate goal is to have an SRO in every school.
Yes, sir. This is a start. You know, we're trying to identify, for example, Mount Airy. If something would happen at that school, you're looking at a 10 to 12 minute response. Unless just somebody happens to be in that area right at that moment. And 10 minutes is a long time. It's a long time when you need help. So we will try to identify those schools that we think are in need the most, and place those positions there.
I think most people are very much aware now that the 1% was bricks and mortar, as it's been described. And I had to convince many people that it was for upgrades, and I did emphasize the security application. But this right here is critically important. So, Mr. Hunt, can I make a motion that we send this to the 7 o'clock meeting for a full vote?
You can, but are we in the holding pattern right now, Sheriff Taylor, until those two questions are answered? Or what affirmative action, if any, do you need from us tonight?
I need a yes vote.
Right, well, I know that, but
No, but I think to be fair to the board, we don't want to send a message that we're on the fence about this, because they could pull that money. The DCJS could pull that money. And I know other localities are looking for those funds. We don't want to be in that arena. So you can always, if you vote to approve it, you can always come back and rescind that vote. You can say, we thought about this, and we just can't afford it, or we don't have the timeline, whatever the board decides.
Mr. Warren, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna make a motion, because I don't want to just put it out there wholesalely, because it's no way in the world this board can possibly come back with the environment we're in and say we want to back up on a motion that puts SRO officers in.
Yeah.
So, Sheriff, would you be comfortable if we made the motion that we want to approve this grant pending the AG ruling in our favor that we can use current SRO officers in the grant? In the event we cannot, we will revisit this issue as it relates to having to hire all new people.
I think that's an absolutely good idea.
No, I'll second that.
I do.
and so the message we're sending is that we agree in principle to this idea.
right.
We just need to
Agree and
shine
waiting
up the
to hear.
details a little
Yes.
bit.
Mr. Warren, we agreed on that. He just said it more eloquently than I did.
Which I think too, I
I
would
had
like
more
to
time to
think
think
they
about
would take into consideration, I would hope, that, let's say they tell you you have to hire, you got to train them. I would think somebody in Richmond would realize that, let's say we can't move the 8. If we have to hire, you're gonna have to train. I mean, and training classes aren't tomorrow. They may be months down the road.
And, Mr. Chairman, I was at VACO the last couple of days, and this was a topic that people were talking about
Yep.
Amongst themselves, not formally, but I think there's going to be either a legislative or budgetary fix to this coming up, because
I agree.
we are sitting on a historic surplus, and I would be shocked if a portion of that surplus was not carved out for this worthy project.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Sheriff Taylor, I think it's critically important that this board is viewed in terms of being proactive in light of everything that's going on right now as far as security in our schools. I'm going to second Mr. Warren's motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Tucker.
Mr. Tucker.
Any further discussion? All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Listen, thank you all. If you have any questions at all about the numbers, please call on me.
We will. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you all.
I think this is a good day for us. It sends a clear message that we're going to protect our children at any cost.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, good input. Thank y'all. All right, go ahead and hit your second there, Mr. Tucker. And gentlemen, cast your vote. All right, thank you so much. Mr. Adcock, I believe you're up next.
That's a tough act to follow right there, Chris.
Good to see you, Chris. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you. I've got a presentation here. So we have been working on most of you are familiar with, except for Mr. Tucker maybe, we've been working on some preliminary plans for improvements to 3 of our solid waste collection sites. And I wanted to give an update on that. We have limited funding available, so I wanted to get some direction from the board on how to move forward with the sites. The 3 sites that were identified previously by staff to look at were the Mount Hermon site, the Motley site, which is at 1130 Highway View Road in Hurt, right there at the exit to Hurt off of 29, and the Berry Hill site, which is at 110 Target Drive in the 58 West, Roswell, Westover community. This slide shows our most recent quarter, our tonnage that we've taken into each site. The 3 sites that have been identified for improvements are shown in yellow, and then the other sites are ranked. Mount Hermon is clearly our most busiest site with 600 tons during the last quarter that ended in September the 28th, 22. Motley is the 4th place at 376 tons, and Berry Hill is down in 8th place with 360 tons. The Mount Hermon draft expansion, and we went over this briefly at a prior meeting, is looking to add 2 new compactors to that site and some additional space for recycling and roll-off containers. If you see this picture here, the site that is identified to the expansion site is behind those trees. We'll keep those trees in place, and we'll do some paving around behind that site, some additional land that we've acquired, and put those compactors on the other side. And the plan initially is we would keep that gated off until we needed it, if in times of extreme need, holidays and things like that. We would open it up to accept additional trash. We can also open it up for problems that we have with our existing compactors. And then at some point down the road, when those compactors that we have existing kind of reach the end of their useful life, we can move completely to the new site and then reuse those spaces for some other possibly open tops or recycling boxes there. The engineer's cost estimate for the Mount Hermon site is shown here. It's about $500,000. That includes mostly paving, concrete and traffic control, the compactors themselves, electrical work, some grading, fencing, and then the contingency and some miscellaneous items, and then the engineering to complete the bidding documents for that. The Motley site is, this is one we've had some trouble with. It looks like that we were looking to put some additional paving around the back there. We've been struggling with where to put the compactor on this site, and it's very tight. It's an older site. There's a picture of it there, and I'm kind of I want to make a suggestion that we look at possibly acquiring some additional land for this site and doing a new site. When you look at the cost, the engineer's cost estimate here from Motley is $330,000. We built a brand new site at Climax for $499,000. We did a brand new site at Level Run Road for $375,000. That doesn't include land acquisition, but I don't think that land costs in that area are going to be extremely high, and it would give us a chance. We've already got a really good layout with the Climax site. It would give us a chance to put a new, more customer-friendly site in and not trying to squeeze in a new compactor here at this site, which we looked at putting it down on the low end, which really makes it tough for our trucks to navigate, and we looked at putting it up on the upper end where that open top box is, and it's just really no good way to put that in there. You can see with in this rendering, the cars, the vehicles, they don't have a lot of room to get through, and then you have trucks coming in to pick up dumpsters. It's kind of a traffic nightmare there.
It's jammed up.
Very much so.
Really tight, yes, sir.
And that site, looking at, as I mentioned, is $329,960 was the engineer's estimate there. And then we looked at the Berry Hill site for some expansion. The darker paving on the top there is what is existing, and what we're looking at, the engineer's suggestion was to go and expand that out and put a new concrete pad in the back for recycling or roll-off, and then do some other improvements. And we also notice in looking at this and reviewing this design that we have the county owns a lot across that gravel drive, which we see that square and those 3 boxes. So we kind of put in as a suggestion that we put in some recycling containers in that location. And I think I would go back and rework that so they're more at an angle and we don't have as much pavement at that site. But I think that's something that we can look at doing possibly either in addition to expanding at the top or in lieu of expanding at the top, because in the top scenario, there's just getting around that existing retaining wall with the truck and cars is very, very tight there as well. So the Berry Hill expansion estimate was site prep, paving, fencing, site landscaping, restoration, and engineering was $315,420. So our funding currently available in our compactor improvement, sites improvement account is $538,000. Once the Meadow Ridge Court site is complete, now we have allocated for that bid amount, that contract amount, but we would like to keep, and there's some extra money in that account for the new compactor sites, but we don't want to try to use that until we figure out if we have any problems with the new site, any change orders or anything that may come up, or equipment purchases, things like that. But we have about $538,000 in another account for compactor sites improvement. Due to this limited funding, we need to prioritize these sites to determine which ones we move forward on. And due to the amount of tonnage received at Mount Hermon, as we showed in that earlier slide, staff recommends moving forward with this project with the others to follow as funding allows. And we may even look at possibly doing some minor improvements to the other 2 sites. It may just help out in the midterm, but I really think that we, on the Motley site, we look for some additional land to expand that site for a brand new facility that would replace that. And then at Berry Hill, we could possibly do the extra recycling containers on that lower site and not have to worry about the traffic congestion on the upper site. So with that, I just would like to ask the board to give us some guidance in moving forward on those projects.
Chris, let me ask you, as far as contingency and miscellaneous, you're looking at Mount Hermon over 92,000 plus, Motley's 49 plus, Berry Hill 63. That's a pretty large amount. So what exactly are within contingency and miscellaneous?
That's a lot of that is lighting, a lot of the traffic markings, just miscellaneous that the engineer couldn't pin down without a more detailed plan. So they did throw it. I do admit that is a high contingency.
But it's an estimate at this time, correct?
Yes, yep.
And on Berry Hill, across the road that you were talking about, how much land do we own there?
It's about half the size of that other lot. I think I can't remember off my hand, maybe 1.5 acres.
Okay.
You know, as you turn in to go up to the site, you know, the entrance is on the right. This land is right there on the other side of that road.
Okay.
It's kind of used as sometimes we drop off empty containers there when we're dropping off and picking up, just as a way station.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Sir, in your presentation, you said that the Meadow Ridge Court site, once it's complete, there could be some leftover funding. Is there any estimate or approximation that you could maybe give the board?
I think I just looked. I know Kim probably doesn't like me to even say this, but it was in the neighborhood of $250,000, I think, that assuming that we've got the encumbrance correct in that account, but I think that was what it was left over.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You probably hadn't looked.
I can't hear.
Okay, yeah. She said what's in that account should be correct, and we can verify that and come back to you with that.
Thank you, sir.
This Motley site is right there at the exit, close where the new fire and rescue building is?
Yeah,
Okay,
directly adjacent to it. And-
Between the bridge and the fire and rescue building.
gotcha.
And we're hemmed in to that site by the right-of-way of 29, Business 29,
Yes, sir.
which kind of prevents us from doing any expansion there, which is why I would like to see us look at a better site that's a little more accommodating, a little more land. And that the fact that we've got a really good layout now with Climax, I think that's a good layout. We can just basically take that and repeat it in another, buy an equal lot that's equal size to that and just repeat that site.
I know you're looking for some direction, but can we wait and see how it pans out? Or do you need an answer today or some direction?
On the,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'd like to make a motion that we follow along with staff's recommendations to proceed as they have requested during their presentation.
okay.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Go right
The
ahead.
reason I went ahead and made that motion is there has been repetitive problems with the compactors at the Mount Herman site. And if we have them go down, and, I mean, they're old, then if we haven't been proactive to get something done, we're gonna have 600 tons of something we gotta do with. It could be real costly to the county to transport it the old-fashioned way and move it. So, that being said, and I would also request that maybe Mr. Adcock and Ms. Vanderhyde look in a little more detail at the enterprise fund and give us a more financial detailed report of that enterprise fund out in the landfill as far as availability of funds to address some of the other site issues we might have. We might need to relocate some funds to address those other projects.
and that's what I would like to do, I didn't know how the relocation of the Motley site would be taken, but if that is acceptable, then I think we can look at Berry Hill doing some just moderate improvements there that would help some of the concerns at that site as well. We can move forward with a bid package on Mount Herman, and then we can probably add to that bid package some site improvements there at Berry Hill, pending the amount of funding that we have available. Then we package it all together, and it would probably come in at a better price to have it as a 2-for-1 type of deal.
I have to agree with Mr. Warren, but see, Mr. Scarce and I, we want to sort of root Berry Hill a little closer to the top.
Certainly. And that was another one that just, the layout was very concerning to us going around behind that one. You visited that site, so we started thinking about some options, and so I hate to come back without a firm plan, but we kind of wanted to kick around some options. We wanted to hurry up and get the pricing done so that I could come back and give that to you, so that I think we can, if that's an acceptable, and we need to make sure that our zoning is correct on that lot too, that we are able to do that. But I think that would really help that site. Maybe we can do all recycling down there on the lower end and have all the trash collection on the upper end.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any
Yeah.
other questions? Mr. Warren, you made that motion.
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And we have a second?
I second.
All right, thank you, sir. Without any further discussion, cast your vote. And that is passed. Mr. Adcock, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Ms. Boswell, I think you're up next. Good to have you.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to do my 2022 fiscal year-end report. Usually I do it in October, but we pushed it to November this year. So I'm here just to go over those final figures for the year. So just to go through a little bit about how much we allocate each year. So we allocated $6 million for the FY22 year, but we did not spend all of that money. We ended up spending $5.3 million. So we stayed under our allocation for the year. I know all those numbers are very close together and crumpled up. They're all big numbers. Our supplemental charts for the year. So every year, the state allocates us a certain amount of money, and if we go over that certain amount, we have to ask for what they call a supplemental request, where we have to ask for additional funds. Every year that I have been in this position, we have had to ask for that, but you can see that over the years, the amount of money that we have had to ask for has decreased extremely. So this year, we only asked for $451,000. We did not use even all of that amount of money that we asked for, because we're going off of guesstimate of how much more we're going to need to finish out our year. We don't have exact numbers when I ask for that money. So you can see that we've been trending down and then kind of leveling off over the last couple of years, which I think is great. And this chart just kind of goes over our expenditures for the year. So we start in 2017, and you see we trended downward, and then we kind of leveled off a little bit. 2021, we had a little bit of an increase in expenditures. I always put this due to COVID and everything that happened with that. We had a little bit of an increase, but we have actually decreased again for the 2022 fiscal year. And this last slide kind of shows the changes that we've had. So it goes over all of our savings from 2018 through 2022. So in 2021, like I said, we had an increase in expenditures of over $400,000. But this year we had a decrease of expenditures in $377,000. All while having an increase in foster care kids. Prior to COVID, we usually kept about 30 to 35 kids in care at a time. We're averaging about 50 kids in care at a time and still been able to decrease our numbers. So I think that shows a lot for staff, our team, our board, and the hard work that everyone's been putting in to try to make sure that we're being as fiscally responsible as possible with our money.
Cheryl, are we finally off probation and can party again?
We are. I don't know if we're going to party, but we're not done with our audits yet. So we have paid all of our money back to the state, but they are extremely behind with audits. So they are just starting our 2020 audit, and we are on the audit schedule through 2023. So that means we'll have 3 more after they finish the 2020. But we'll be prepared for it.
And just so the board knows, it's a testament to Richard Hicks and Kim Vanderhyde. Cheryl has been a rock star for us. If you see the trend line in the expenditures we've had since 2017, but for that little hiccup with COVID, we've finally gotten our hands around this monster, and I think we've wrestled to the ground, and I just want the board to know how much we appreciate what Cheryl does to a very difficult segment of our population. She's done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Could you expand on what you just said? I think a couple of members are not really familiar with that.
About the probation?
Oh, yeah, and the fines and the payback.
Cheryl, why don't you just give a 10-cent tour about where we
He said 10.
10, yeah. It's a lot more than 10 cents, believe me. Yeah.
Right, so this was prior to my time back in, Kim, if I'm right, 2013, 12. I think everything came out in 2013. So in 2012, the state was contacted because, and this is all going off of what I think happened, or what I was told that has occurred. So the state was called in because we thought we were doing some things incorrectly. We were told that they would help us get it all straight. Well, they did, but they also put us with a like $7 million fine, and then said that we would only have to pay back $2.5 million of that over a 10-year period, which averages about $250-some thousand a year over 10 years. We also had to have clean audits for 10 years straight with no major deficiencies. So we are getting closer to that now. And so far, we've had clean audits going through, and I don't foresee any major issues.
I've been here 12 years, and it was the first week I got here, we had to go to Richmond, and we asked for help, and no good deed goes unpunished, and we were the canary in the coal mine, and they dinged us for $9 million, and we negotiated down to 2.2, and then they wanted all the money up front, and then we decided to pay it, we negotiated to pay it over 10 years with clean audits. So we were doing very little different than other localities were doing. We just asked for help and were smacked on the hand to be an example to the rest of the Commonwealth. So we learned a difficult lesson, and we have come out better for it.
I will say now we're a pretty good example to the state of how to do things correctly.
And you said we've made our final payment?
We have made our final payment, yes.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
I just want to echo the sentiments. I worked with the CPMT board for many, many years, and I just want to thank you and your staff for all the hard work. It's been a learning experience. It was a learning experience for me, but all the hard work you guys do, it goes, a lot of times you don't get the accolades you deserve. So I just want to make sure you let the staff know that we truly appreciate everything they've done.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
We don't have to formally accept this audit, correct? You just have to present it per state code, right?
Yeah, I'm just presenting. I'll come back and present the audit once I have it back, but they're
Do
just
that in January?
extremely delayed. So once I have it, I'll do that as well.
All right. Nothing else? Thank you. Good job. That brings us down to item D. This is something I asked to put back on the agenda here where we could talk about bylaws. This is just a little quick discussion, if we will. Our bylaws are old. They're out of date. We need to update them. We need to fix them. And so what I would ask of my colleagues is to take a good look at the old bylaws and submit to Kaylin, if you will, your suggestions on how we can approve them, and then maybe next month, Mr. Hunt, if I'm not mistaken, we could take a look at them and possibly come to terms with them and vote them in for the new year.
Right. There's a section of our bylaws that said that you have to give at least 10 days notice before you change the bylaws, so I appreciate what y'all are doing. We're not asking for anything definitive tonight, but just get in touch with me or Kaylin about anything that you want changed. We could draft some language potentially for the December meeting, but I will suggest to you that it makes far more sense to approve any revisions to the bylaws at your January reorganizational meeting, because we always approve them as one of the standing items on that meeting. So let's just work towards that as our goal to potentially clean them up in January. Okay?
I think we first talked about this back in February, and so, again, I just appeal to my colleagues to take a look at them and make some good concerted input as far as how we can change them and make them better. And it's like I said back then, whether we're talking about the Constitution, the bylaws, or the Code of Ethics, it just helps guide us, and I think it will all make us better people. So let's take a look at that, okay? Thank y'all. Now we're down to item F, Fire and Rescue Funding discussion. Mr. Skeers, I think you wanted to lead that, did you?
I thought that was your bailiwick.
Okay, well,
we also have Mr. Key here if you need some guidance about what's going on there. Chris.
Yeah, I requested that the funding issue be put back on the agenda so we could vote it up or down, so. Mr. Key, good to have you.
Thank y'all. Basically, we wanted to have discussion on the $77,000 and also the $97,000. The 77 being for the EMS responses, from going from $15 per call to $25 per call. That was included in the service agreement, so we wanted to get that approved. Also discussion on the $97,000, which would raise the base funding from the fire and rescue agencies, all equal to $26,500 per year.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Warren, go ahead, sir.
As I told Mr. Ingram at the end of our meeting when we had this discussion, I don't have a problem in changing the per call so they get this potentially $77,000. And I don't even have a problem, even though they truly didn't have any contingency fund, they using somebody else's contingency. So I think we got that cleared up and everybody has an understanding of that now. I don't have a problem with the $97,000, but I'd like to make the motion that we approve the increase in per call to accommodate the motion, the recommendation that was originally made from you, but to amend the $97 to be placed in the emergency fund, so it could all be used by any agency that has a major issue that could potentially make or break if a motor goes down or something like that. And any of them would have the availability to get it. Of course, they would bring it to you, and then it would go to the commission and ultimately come over to us to stamp the approval of it. But we have an emergency fund already, so I think putting that $97,000 in there, that is a blanket, a safety net for all of them, could be very beneficial. So I will make that motion, and I will support that motion if seconded and approved.
That was for 97,000, right?
97,
Okay, I
yeah.
thought you said 97. Okay.
All right, there's Mr. Warren's motion. Ms. Hunt, is it appropriate to make a counter motion?
Sure, you always can do
Yeah.
that, and that has to be dealt with, assuming you get a motion in a second, that has to be dealt with before you go back to Mr. Warren's original motion.
Yeah, I just feel incumbent that we ought to approve both the requests because it goes back historically. And simply put, our fire and rescue community was pretty much told that the money would be available through the contingency funding, which shouldn't have been sent, but needless to say, it was. And the 15 to 25, I'm glad we agree on that. But I just would make the motion to go ahead and fund both as had been discussed in the past, and then look toward any potential problems as they may arise and correct them as needed. But I will say this, going into next year, maybe we can do a better job with these issues.
And this certainly shows no disrespect for anyone's viewpoints on this. I just like it going into the emergency fund because I'm not sure that I believe $3,500 can make a significant difference. When I look at some of the organizations, some of them are very successful and have surplus levels. Some of them have deficiencies. I'm very concerned about the middle of the road person having those emergencies and not being able to weather it. So I'm respectfully, I'm going to stick with my opinion, and I'm only going to support it if we put it in an emergency contingent. And again, this is not disrespectful to anyone or disagreeing with anybody else having an opinion. Everybody has them. So.
And I sort of agree with him, but still yet, I think that we gave our word, and he's correct. That amount of money won't make or break any department. I don't think it will. But having said that, I think that we said that we would fund it, and I feel like we need to fund it, so I'm going to stick with my motion.
And Mr. Chairman, I have asked the question repeatedly, and I've heard those same comments about somebody told them they would get it, but I can't get anybody to fess up and say they told them because obviously nobody with the authority told them, you know, so, but I've heard it so much, I got to believe that, you know, they might have certainly been misled. I'm just not sure it was by someone that had the authority to mislead them. So
I don't think they were misled with any ill intent. I think it was just probably in a good spirit, if you will. Somebody just trying to say, listen, we're going to support you, and the money's here, even if we have to dip into contingency funds. And that shouldn't have been said, but it was said. And I have multiple witnesses that said he said it, but you know, we need not go into that. But you know what I'm saying. But I just think that we ought to keep our word and honor this funding request. And again, moving into next year, take this as a learning lesson.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Cheshire.
Your point, very well taken.
Absolutely.
I like the idea that I know how much fire engines, transports are going up, like ridiculous. If it's got fire or EMS tied to it, you can forget it. I mean, the cost is ridiculous. I would make a motion next year, like I said, a contingency fund. We're going to have major breakdowns. I would like to be able to have a fund for these departments because they are so costly. The motors, I know with the fire station I'm with, the turbos go out, they're not cheap. and you look at the amount of miles that are put on. But I do, if we, if we give our word to someone, yeah, I believe that. But I do very much like the idea of having, for the next term, having a contingency fund, and if we have a major event, we could lose one of our trucks to a vehicle accident. I like that idea.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'll get in there with Tim. I really like the idea. We've got a month and a half left in the year, and if something does happen and this money is already sent and we have nothing to grab, then, I can see a department, something happen, bad accident or something just going out. It's like a safety fund amount that we can use. And then next year, Tim, I think it's a good idea for us to set it that way and have an emergency fund. But for right now, we don't know what's going to happen to the end of the year. So I kind of like that.
Let me also share with you guys that several months back, Kim Vanderhyde and myself, Clarence Mundy, met with the leaders in the fire and rescue community, and this was a topic of discussion. And they were told that this money would be coming out of contingency, and Kim very eloquently walked them through that and said, we're looking at carryover money, not contingency money. And so they were happy with that answer. And so once, we finalized the budget, we had carryover money, then that's when they expected for us to, to abide by our word. And that's where I'm at right now. We gave them our word, and I think we ought to stand by it. And really,
And
like
I don't
Mr. Warren said,
I don't have a big problem with, what occurred. I mean, I don't have a big problem with the $97,000. I just don't believe $3,500 makes a huge difference, but I believe $97,000 makes a huge difference if somebody has that bad emergency. And that's why I really advocate for putting it in the emergency fund, not just spreading it out to all of them. And I do have a problem, even if staff or anyone was involved, that indicated that somebody could get carryover money or contingency money without board approval, because that's absolutely against all rules. So, and I know things are said and misinterpreted sometimes, but that gives me great concern that something could be have said and been misconstrued to that point. And I see Ms. Vanderhyde shaking her head that she didn't do that, so.
she did. She did.
Okay. Well, I and let's be really clear when we talk about year end. When we talk year end in here, we're not talking about December 31st. We're actually talking about June 30th. So we got 7 months. We're only 5 months in, and we want to start giving each department a little bit of money versus holding the $97,000 for a potential big disaster. And I mean, like I said, and I don't want to ever penalize anybody for being successful, but we have some departments that are very successful, and we have some departments that, don't have the same participation for whatever those reasons are. A lot of it is dependent upon your community and how many businesses are in your community and all that creates some being more successful than others. So I just like for that middle and little guy to have a little more access, because I can tell you what's going to happen, gentlemen. If they have that major disaster, they got to get that vehicle back on the road. And if we don't put this $97,000 in the emergency fund for them, they're going to be right back in here saying, we got to have it, and we don't have the money, and we didn't put it in the emergency fund. Guess what we got to do? We got to make a hard decision then to adjust our budget and go try to find $97,000 because we didn't put it in that place. And certainly, I'm not going to raise my hand if we have that medium guy that needs it, or the smaller agency. I'm not going to raise my hand not to serve those people, but I certainly would rather have it in the emergency fund, with all due respect, Mr. Ingram. So I'm certainly not trying to be an adversary tonight.
Well, it looks like we have three motions, right?
I think Mr. Chester's talking about, he would make that motion next year. So we got to deal with your motion first. So your motion was to fund both of the topics.
Yeah, to fund both of them, that's my
So
motion.
we have a motion. Now we need to get a second. And if you get a second, we can continue discussion or just vote. And if your vote's successful, that will be the motion that is presented to the full board tonight during matters from the work session. If your motion is not successful, we will revert back to Mr. Warren's initial one, which is to fund the per call increase, but put the remaining money in the lockbox.
And Mr. Hunt was correct, that would be for next year, on my end.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I said that, Mr. Hunt is correct, that would be my proposal for next year.
For next year, okay. Well, that was my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Mr. Cheshire, thank you, sir. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a few things I'd like to get off my chest. I think my question is what empirical data was used to come up with the decision that more funding needed to go to the fire and rescue agencies. I sent a spreadsheet out to all the board earlier after reviewing the 990s, which are still getting updated. I think there's still 6 that have not been updated for this year's IRS reporting. And for me, when you have almost $1 million in surpluses between the 16 or so agencies, I think only three had deficits with the latest reporting. I think it's kind of funny that someone's crying about needing more money. And I really wouldn't have any problem with providing the extra funding if we had some kind of accountability, the stuff that was gotten rid of in January, which included us reviewing their 990s as well as 2 at random audits a year. I think until that stuff gets put back in, I'm going to be a no-go on any additional funding to fire and rescue. And the thing that kills me when you talk about the word of people, the Fire and Rescue Commission, every agency, every board approved the fire and rescue study that was done in 2015. In that, it wanted to have 2 audits per agency per year. And we kind of tailored it down. I think initially it was going to be 1 audit a year, and then the county came back and said, we'll do 2 audits at random at our cost, not at the agency's cost. Every fire agency and board approved that. So that they gave us their word that they were going to follow those bylaws or those requirements. And we have a responsibility on this board to the tax-paying citizen. And if you're not, I'm sure none of you went back and looked at the 990s. Chris Keys has a database for those things. I encourage us to maybe table this thing until someone can bring me back some data that says each department needs this extra funding. I know some are having some issues with their gas allocation because of the diversions, and I would be agreeable to maybe getting some money for their gas costs because a lot of them are hurting for that kind of stuff. But at this point, I'm going to stand on principle until we have some kind of accountability over these agencies. That's our responsibility too, to the taxpaying citizens. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Scares. That's an IRS issue, is it not?
No, it's our issue.
Is it an IRS issue?
Do the fire and rescue
Is it an
agencies work
IRS
for
issue?
us?
That's what I'm asking.
Do they work for us?
I'm asking if this is a federal IRS issue.
Well-
That's the comment I'm asking from you.
The only thing I have
And
to
not an
say,
explanation, is that yes or no?
in my estimation, they work for us.
So you're not going to give an answer?
Mr. Chairman.
We can bring this to the IRS if you want to have a full-blown situation like
Well, it
Roanoke
seems
County
that
did.
they
We can
hired
do that.
86,000 new IRS agents, and you're still on this trail.
Pardon?
Mr. Chairman.
Why is, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, may I ask Mr. Hunt the same question I asked him behind closed doors? With these funds, are we compliant with the state and federal government?
That's a loaded question.
I understand.
This is really
Because it's, what Mr. Scarce is trying to raise is a compliance issue. So I want to make sure that this board, along with the sacred trust of the public's funds, are compliant once we
That might be a question for closed session, don't you think, Mr. Hunt?
Well, we have a requirement that they file 990s, correct, Mr. Key? And they have not been compliant in the past, but they're slowly getting there.
Yes, sir.
What's difficult to ascertain if they're compliant or not is the fact that the feds give them extensions to file certain things. And so we're kind of in that sweet spot where we don't know if they're fully compliant or not. But the issue we have here is, I understand we've lumped together the per-call money and the lockbox money. I would suggest to you that the per-call money, you guys have already agreed to do that when you approved the service agreement. It has language in there that says that y'all shall increase that per-call dollars. So you certainly can do another motion for that, but we've essentially already approved that. Is that correct, Mr. Key?
Yes, sir.
So really what we're here debating is transparency, compliance, and what to do about this lockbox money. So what I suggest to you is, we have two motions on the floor. Let's dispose of the motions. This will go to the full board tonight, and that's when we could have additional discussion and a vote up or down about what to do with this lockbox money. I don't want to rush anybody because this is an important issue, but we have got to try to slay the jail dragon in closed session tonight, and we are rapidly running out of time. I love the engagement tonight. It's so refreshing to see because we haven't had that much in the past, but we kind of misjudged the timing on this meeting, and we've got a lot of people lined up for closed session tonight.
I made the motion, have a second. Without any further discussion, cast your vote. Okay, that's approved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, it's approved to recommend for the full board tonight.
Right, yes, sir, to the full board. Thank you.
I remind you, Mr. Chairman, that we added,
Item 7.
and Mr. Warren will drive the bus on that, and and the Honorable Robin Gord is here to weigh in.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I want to make a motion that I've been contacted by several citizens that participate in the land use program, and they've not gotten the proper information as early as they normally get it, and we all know that everything is going on is different now, and they have to comply and have that back. My understanding is by December the 10th. Some of these properties are owned out of Pennsylvania County. Some may be by people that live out of state, and there's some time restraints. We have an opportunity that we could extend that deadline, and I would like to recommend that we extend that deadline instead of December the 10th to December the 31st, 2022, and waive the $100 late fee, just to send the right message to our ag community that we are conscious of what they have to do and what they have to comply with. It is our #1 industry in our county and in the state of Virginia, and we should always put our best foot forward to assist those folks that certainly assist this county in great ways.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. What about a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Dalton, thank you, sir. I think Ms. Robin Coles-Gord has some comments on that, so.
Yes, Mr. Arnold contacted me this morning about the board's wishes to extend the deadline, and I told him that I was not in favor of that. Last year, the forms were mailed November the 12th, so I talked to the vendor today, and she told me, originally she had told me Friday, but today she told me Thursday, which is the 17th, so that's about a week later. The only thing in extending the deadline, I know you said December 31st, that's a Saturday. So by state law, we have to default to the next working day, which would be like January the 3rd.
I'm comfortable if it's a better date that works for your office, changing that date to the 20 whatever. But they need an extension. It's not their fault that we didn't get the bills out earlier.
Yeah, well, it's not a bill, it's just the revalidation form.
Yeah, but they have to be
And-
completed and signed by the landowners, correct?
That's true, that is
Yeah,
correct.
that's right.
And my question to Mr. Arnold was, is the board going to extend the deadline for the taxes? Because that's the same date, December 10th. And to my knowledge, I haven't had any phone calls of anybody receiving a tax bill yet.
Well, the difference in the tax bill is they're paid by the property owner and doesn't require a signature from other
That is
individuals.
correct, yes.
So, I mean, we got to adjust it for our ag folks in some manner. The question is, if the 31st is on Saturday, do we back it up to, well, I mean, I don't have a problem if we back it up a full week from the end of the year, if that makes life easier for, I'm not trying to make it difficult for Robin. It's not her fault that the printer didn't,
Right.
get everything done. I'm sorry, Ms. Gore,
That's
Commissioner
okay. You
Gore.
come-
I didn't mean to say Robin.
That's okay.
So, I mean, it's not about that. It's about,
12/31 is a Saturday, 12/30 is a Friday. They would be due the 10th this year, which is also a Saturday. So I think we need to pick some date that works best.
Yeah, so.
yeah,
because
what if
the
we just
10th
did the 24th? That's a Friday?
That's Saturday.
That's a Saturday.
All right, so
26th is a Monday, or.
The 23rd, 26th, I don't care. You tell me what works better for your department calendar-wise,
Well, if you're insisting on extending it, I would say the 20th
okay?
at the
I'm
latest.
good with giving them 10 days, 10 additional
That's
days. I will amend my motion to say 10 days if Mr. Dalton down there will amend his second.
And just so that the board is clear, your extension is supported by legal authority, the state code and our local code under Chapter 6 allows us to extend it.
Yeah,
But be
but
clear.
I want to
that we
amend
would-
this motion. I
Yes,
want to
yeah.
amend the motion to be the 20th, Robin,
Okay.
provided that material is sent out no later than Friday, the 18th of November.
And just to be clear, you're saying anything then after the 20th, then the $100 will apply to the end
Correct.
of the year? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
I'm not trying to make it difficult, I'm just trying to
I
accommodate the other
understand.
side. I don't want to make it difficult for your department either.
Now, that won't change the price as far as getting it printed and nothing. Well, all this has already been
No,
set. Is that
all
correct?
that's taken care of.
So
We're
that's
just
going-
waiting for them to finish the printing and get them in the
Right.
mail.
It's
Yeah.
going to say the 10th, but we're going to
Yes.
hopefully give them to the 20th. Give them that week.
No,
Yeah,
we-
it will
we-
say the
If this
10th.
motion passes, we're going to give them till the 20th, and we're not going to charge them $100. But I think it would be only fair if we put this out, Caleb's in the back, if we put this out on the county website and Facebook site that it's been extended. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, cast your vote.
Do I need to second that motion?
Yeah.
I'll second that motion Mr. Warren made.
With the revisions. Very good.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, that is passed. Thank you, Robin, thank you so
you,
much.
Robin.
Colesgore, that is. Okay. All right, let's see, any business meeting discussion items, Vaden?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Would you read us into closed session, please?
Yes, sir. Tonight, we have two closed session items under Section 8 of the work session. The first one is discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A3. Subject matter, jail, land, property acquisition. Purpose, legal consultation / legal advice regarding the same. And our second closed session item is B, discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the businesses or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A5, subject matter, unannounced prospective business industries, purpose, general economic development projects update.
Thank you, sir. I make a motion, we go into closed second. What about a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley. Without further discussion, cast your vote, please. And we're now in closed session.
Mr. Chairman, we need to certify the work session and adjourn that so we can start the main event here soon.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Chester's here and Daryl's right, he's coming down now.
Okay. All right, we returned to open session at 6:55 PM. We will now certify the closed session, and I will read the certification paragraph, and then we'll have a vote. Be it resolved that the Pennsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session on November 15th, 2022, the board hereby certifies by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. If any board member believes that there was a departure from the requirements of the Act, he shall so state prior to the vote indicating the substance of the departure. The statement shall be recorded in the board's minutes. We will now just do a roll call. Mr. Cheshire?
Yes.
Mr. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Dudley?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Reverend Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
Mr. Ingram?
Yes, sir.
The meeting is hereby certified, and now it's appropriate to adjourn the work session, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And we have